Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about Linux and maybe a little bit about watches, but let's start with Linux. Okay, recently, or maybe it was already a few weeks or months ago, I don't know, there was some YouTubers, sorry, or some articles suggested that Linux Mint should die or it should be or development should stop, so the developers should develop something else instead of Linux Mint, and some YouTubers also picked it up, made videos about it, and I just find it crazy that there are really people who presumably know Linux and they suggest or and think and say that the Linux Mint should go away and developers of Linux Mint should do something else. I mean to develop some other Linux related open source project. And I think it is just it's so bad to hear something like that, because whoever says that Linux Mint should go away doesn't know what he or she is talking about. So let's check out Linux Mint. What is Linux Mint? Why is it so cool, so good, so fantastic, so nice? Okie dokie. linuxmint.com. Okay, actually, Linux Mint is running on my wife's laptop. My wife's laptop is a pretty old Dell laptop. I think it's 5, 6 years old. It's got an i5 processor in it. I've upgraded the memory to 8 RAM, 8 giga RAM. It's got an old SSD. Uh, it's a pretty good laptop, although it's old, but it's good. It runs, and it runs very, very well with the Linux Mint. Not because it's old. Uh, I've tried Linux Mint on other machines, much newer machines, and Linux Mint runs very nicely on all of my machines. So, and actually, Linux Mint is the only distribution can that I can recommend to everybody who wants to get into Linux. Uh, I can even, or I would even install Linux Mint on the machine of my own parents or parents-in-law. They are still running Windows because uh, they are teachers and they need the Microsoft softwares, like Word or Excel or something like that. I know LibreOffice can or does it all. I know it very well, but not everybody knows it. So they are still stuck with Windows, but I'm waiting for the time when I can wipe Windows out of their machine and install Linux Mint. My in-laws, my parents' in-laws, they have a very, 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 it's a really old Dell laptop. It is really old. And I've installed Windows 10 on that laptop long, long time ago. At that time, I wasn't a Linux fan myself. I didn't use Linux at that time, so I installed. Actually, it started with Windows 8. Yeah, it was in the Windows 8 times. And then I just, you know, all the older generation doesn't like change, so they are also stuck with Windows for now. But as soon as they have some problem and they ask me to do something with the machine, I just will tell them, guys, you need Linux, and I will install Linux Mint, no other distro, Linux Mint, because it's just so good for. It's not only for beginners, it's not only for older people. It's Linux Mint is just for anybody and everybody who just wants his or her computer to work and just do the job. Linux Mint is not for the people who who want to use Linux for the sake of using Linux, who want to learn about how Linux works and make changes, hack around. It's not for those people. Linux Mint is really for those people for whom Linux is just a tool, not the purpose. And that's why I like, for example, Switch to Linux. This is a YouTube channel. I really recommend this channel. And Easy Linux. They are both very well-known Linux users, or how should I say it, Linux enthusiasts, Linux users, yeah, in the Linux community. They both use exclusively Linux in their homes and for work. And what I really like about Switch to Linux is that his job is, so he does front end web development. So that's his job. He develops websites and he does it all on Linux Mint. And why? Because Linux is a tool for him, and he doesn't want his tool to break, because he needs his tool to get his job done and to bring in money at the end of the day, or in the end of the day. That's what using the computer is about, to make money. And if you use your computer as a tool uh, to run software, to run tools that make you money, you really want to have a very, very stable, reliable, and easy to use machine. And even if something breaks, which, if you don't do something stupid, it will never happen with Linux Mint. At least it has never happened to anybody I know. So if you don't break it, but even if you break it, even if you broke it, you know, even if you broke something and you just installed Linux Mint brand new, okay, let's suppose that you keep your data backed up, of course, that's step zero. But if you had to install Linux Mint again from scratch, from the first moment, you have a system that has all the software most people need. It just works, it's set up. You don't have to search for software in repositories and install it and find that something is incompatible or something breaks. No, it just works out of the box, and it has a very, very rich um, array of tools and software. So that's why I like Linux Mint. And on my wife's laptop, there I installed Linux Mint Cinnamon, and this is my favorite, because if we have a look at all these flavors of Linux Mint, we see that, is the internet slow or the Linux Mint website? Whatever, my father-in-law says, because their laptop is really slow, and I ask him, doesn't it bother you that your laptop is so slow and you have to wait a long time? And he always says, no, I just wait for it. You've got to have patience. That's cool. Okay, so if you look at all of these flavors, let's open these screenshots. They are very, very similar. They are very much like Windows. You have your start menu, your icons, and out of these three, the most modern is Cinnamon. It has the most modern look. I like the Cinnamon start menu, and as far as I can tell, it's also more feature rich. Can I say that? Is it more feature rich? maybe it isn't, I don't know. But Cinnamon is definitely the most modern desktop. I mean that it uses, for example, the most modern GTK, while Mate uses some, I don't know, I don't want to get into this. No idea. Linux Mint Cinnamon is my favorite. So, if Linux Mint went away and the developers left Linux Mint, I would be in trouble suggesting or recommending a distribution to other people. I would be in trouble when I wanted to install a Linux distribution on my parents' computer or my in-laws' computer. Yeah, I could install Ubuntu and they would get used to it. Okay, yeah, of course. But Linux Mint is just, you know, I have always been a Windows user before I became a Linux user, and the thing, I'm just used to Windows. And most people are Windows. Most people come from using Windows, and they need something that is familiar, that is similar to Windows, and that is familiar to them. And that is Linux Mint. And also, the other thing I like about Linux Mint, although it's generally true about Linux these days, that you about it's true about a lot of Linux distributions, that you don't really need a terminal anymore. I like the terminal. The terminal is my favorite app. I like the terminal, but even on Fedora, I don't really need it. I just use the terminal because I like to use it. But I could do updates and install software from the graphical application. So that's it. And those people who really use their computer as a tool, for example, like Switch to Linux, who develops websites on it, or like my parents or in-laws who just really need their computer to edit, for example, Word files or Excel, uh, look at emails, download stuff, open documents, whatever. For them, they need a Linux distribution that is very, very simple, easy, where you can just forget that the terminal even exists, that is just reliable, stable, that has out of the box has the tools most people need, uh, and yeah, and you can. LibreOffice is great. I use LibreOffice, and I even install LibreOffice on my in-laws Windows laptop, and you can do everything with the LibreOffice. So you don't need Microsoft Office. You don't need Windows. In most cases, for most people, Linux is totally usable, and the most usable is Linux Mint. And why should Linux Mint go away? I'm so happy that Linux Mint exists, that it's thriving, it keeps getting new versions. Yeah, okay, it's based on Ubuntu, but that's the other thing I like about Linux Mint. What if Ubuntu went away? What if Ubuntu went crazy, or Canonical went crazy? And what if it became like Windows, and what's then? No big deal. Linux Mint already has a Debian, a pure Debian based flavor. What's then? They would just concentrate all their effort on the Debian based flavor, and everybody who wanted to leave the Ubuntu based version would just install the Debian based one, and you're done. Linux Mint would survive even if Ubuntu went away or Canonical went crazy. So Linux Mint is awesome. I'm very, very happy for Linux Mint, and this really, for some reason, I like Fedora, but if I have to be honest here, I don't use my computer for for any serious stuff. Uh, just some very light things, emails, mm, browsing, yeah, whatever. So I don't really need Fedora, but for some reason I just like Fedora. This is Fedora 30 with GNOME, so this is the Fedora workstation, vanilla workstation. I have installed some extensions. We can actually look at the installed extensions. The tweak tool is very good. I like it a lot. Where are my extensions? Installed extensions. These are my extensions. The application menu, I never use it, but I like it to be there. Dash to dock is here. This is my favorite extension. It makes the UI look like Ubuntu, and I like how Ubuntu looks. Places, I don't really use it, but I like it to be there. This is really useful. The sound input and output device chooser. Here it's just so easy to pick the input and output audio devices. This is very, very useful. Yeah, that's all. So for some reason I like Fedora a lot. I like GNOME, although for a long time my favorite was KDE and XFCE, but now my favorite is GNOME, but my second favorite is KDE. So if GNOME went crazy, I would switch to KDE or XFCE, but maybe KDE. KDE looks just so great and it's so feature rich. I cannot understand those people who have problems with the many settings. In the settings app, you can be lost. Well, don't open it. Don't get lost. KDE by default is just great. Okay. What else did I want to say? I wanted to show something else. Yeah, you see I have LibreOffice. I have Evolution. I use it for my email. I also have a Gmail account, but I really don't use it for anything serious. I have a Posteo email account. Let's have a look at the Posteo. I use them. They are very good. And I configure this email address with Evolution, and I have my emails, my contacts, my calendar. I can also use it with K9 Mail on my Android phone, so it's very, very great. Okay, what else? Yeah, I like DNF. Oh, DNF. I like the terminal, and the DNF is just so great. It's just so great that you can update the machine with this sudo DNF update. That's all. That's all, guys. No sudo apt-get update and sudo apt-get dist upgrade. DNF is just so great. I like DNF a lot. I also like that with Fedora you get very much up-to-date software, you get a lot of updates. I don't need it. So one drawback of Linux Mint could be that the software is not as much up-to-date, but actually it wouldn't be a problem for most people, because although I have Fedora and pretty much the latest software, but I don't need the latest software. I don't. Yeah, it depends what you need, but Linux Mint also supports Flatpaks natively. I mean, it's built in. It's also built into the software shop graphical application where you can install your software. So it's great. Yeah, I don't know what to say. I wish all the success for Linux Mint, and actually I also donated some money to Linux Mint through PayPal because I want Linux Mint, to keep up the good work. I want them to be more and more successful because Linux Mint is just what can I say? Linux Mint is great. It's fantastic. It's good. It should never go away. And those people who say that Linux Mint should go away, they don't know what they are talking about. They should open their eyes and open their mind and just have a look around, and they should go out to people and bring them into Linux, and not geeks, but bring in people like your parents, guys, like ordinary people who are not geeks. They will need and they will love Linux Mint. If someone is used to Mac, the Mac interface, just bring them to Ubuntu. One of my friends likes Mac a lot, and he wanted to try Linux. I recommended Ubuntu to him, and he likes it a lot. So yeah, but for most people, especially if they are coming from Windows, I would recommend, and I do recommend, Linux Mint. And if it will be up to me, everybody in my family is going to get Linux Mint if they ask me to install something on their machines. My wife already has Linux Mint. And maybe one day I will also have Linux Mint on my machine, because it can happen that something breaks on Fedora after upgrading to the newest version, or after upgrading some kind of software. It has never been bad, so it has happened a few times that something broke, but it has never been bad. I was always able to solve it, and really I have experienced it. I can observe it that Fedora is more stable and more reliable with each new release. So the first Fedora I started to use was Fedora 27. So 27, 20, 29, 30 is the fourth Fedora version I've been using really continuously, full time, and it's been getting better. 28 was more reliable, more stable. I had fewer problems than with 27, and 29 was better than 28. 30 is better than 29. So Fedora is great. It's not at all. It's not unstable. It's not a testing ground. It's not just a testing ground for Red Hat. No, it's not true. Fedora is a very, very usable distribution, which is, it's a little bit like rolling release. You have new versions, but the software is kept up to date so much that it's almost like a rolling release, and you can do the in-place upgrades. The in-place upgrade if there is a new version, and I have almost always done it, and without problems. So yeah, okay, that's all, guys. Thanks for watching, and goodbye. Oh, just one more thing. Wristwatch check. This is my Seiko SKX 007. with the spring-made NATO strap. Spring-made, let's check it out. Spring-made. Yeah, there they are. So these are some of the straps they have. This is mine. This is the seat belt Bond. But I've already ordered some more because I just like it a lot. Okay, that's all guys. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.